At Option Genius, we believe that you deserve freedom, financial freedom, so that you have no more worries and more than enough money. Time freedom, so that you could do what you want, when you want to do it. And choice freedom, to live your life on your terms. But the system and Wall Street, how do we fight back? Well, my friend, that's what this podcast is all about. My name is Alan Sama, and this is the Option Genius Podcast. Hey, Genius Nation. Do you guys remember a few years ago, there was this huge boom in popularity for poker, especially Texas Hold'em poker? I mean, I'm talking about like 2000, I think it was 2005, 6, 2007, 8, that time frame. You know, I mean, everywhere you went, all you heard was Texas Hold'em, Texas Hold'em. And then they had the World Series of Poker. You know, that was actually Texas Hold'em. And then they had the World Series of Poker. You know, that was actually on TV. And they had so many different channels where it was just poker all the time. It was crazy. Part of that was because it was so easy to sign up and play poker online, and they had all these different websites where you could go in, deposit your money, and play against people. And that was the dream back then, you know, like everybody. It didn't matter how old you are, it didn't matter if you had any skills, or it didn't matter what you did for a living. You could go online behind your computer screen and just play poker. And if you won, you won. If you lost, you lost. And it was you lost. And it was, you know, like the ultimate dream for so many people, especially the young kids. And there were a lot of kids who made a lot of money, millions of dollars playing online poker. Unfortunately, that kind of came to a halt pretty quickly when the U.S. government decided to crack down on all the poker websites. Now, if you're in the States, I mean, it's unless you go to a casino or you go to like a bar, it's really hard to find poker. Especially online. I'm sure you could find it if you want to, but online it's really hard unless you know your way around the system and the technology and all that, so that they can't tell that you're against the law. But for a while they didn't enforce it, and it just got really big. You know, I was caught up in it just as much as everybody else. I mean, I had all the books, I was watching all the shows, I was watching the pros to try to figure out, you know, what they were doing and try to learn from them. I was playing online every night. You know, I had dreams of being the next big poker superstar myself, right? Winning millions of dollars while sitting in my underwear at home. Sounds really cool, you know? I mean, Daniel Negreanu is the guy who was my favorite, and you know, his nickname is Kid Poker because he still looks like a young guy, even though he's a couple years older than I am. So he's in his 40s right now. You know, the way he would play would be completely amazing. Like he could tell what everybody on the table had. You know, what cards that they had. Because normally in Texas Hold'em, what happens is everybody's given 2 cards. And then those cards nobody else can see. And then there are 3 cards and 4 cards and 5 cards that are dealt face up that everybody can use. So the trick is to try to figure out what everybody has, you know, as their hold cards, meaning as those 2 cards, as their hold cards, meaning as those 2 cards that they got originally. And this guy was uncanny accuracy, could tell and pick what people had. He's like, oh yeah, you have an ace and you have this. And it was amazing how often he was right, you know. And most people consider poker, you know, that's gambling. Yeah, that's just gambling. But there was actually a study done that showed that playing poker well is actually a skill, and it's not just up to chance. You know, and that was their main argument of why poker should be legal and why all these websites shouldn't be shut down, because the websites themselves are making millions and they're making a ton of money off of this. But that was the argument that, you know, playing poker is not like blackjack or video poker, or not video poker, but, you know, like the slots. You know, that's just up to chance. And to be good at poker, you actually have to have skill. But the government didn't see it that way, and so poker is still illegal. But many of the government didn't see it that way, and so poker is still illegal. But many of the same skills that you need to play good poker are the same that you need to trade well. And that was another thing that I realized later on, that a lot of people who are really, really good traders were good poker players at the same time, because they had the same the best poker player in the world is a guy named Phil Hellmuth. Or Hellmuth, I don't know how his name is pronounced, but Phil, and he's also known as the Poker Brat. In fact, he's got a book out called The Poker Brat. Now, I don't know if he is the best in the world. I think he's probably the best because he has the most. If he is the best in the world, I think he's probably the best because he has the most rewards and accolades and what they call bracelets and tournament wins. So I'm just going to say that he's the best. I don't really care. For the sake of this podcast, I'm going to call him the best. So please don't write in and email me and call me and tell me, hey, this guy's here. But what we are going to be talking about is what I learned from this guy. Okay. Recently, I just heard a interview with him where he's saying, he's being interviewed by somebody else. And there were a couple things that really stood out to me that can actually be directly applied to trade implementing these things. So I wanted to take the time out in this episode to actually go over both of these in a little detail so that you can take away some of the skills that this guy already has that he uses at a world-class level. Now, the first thing that he considers super important is money management. He actually considers money management more important than poker skills. Because what he was saying, he gave an example that if there's a guy who's really, really good at money management, but he's not the best poker player, compared to any money management, the first guy is going to come out ahead in the long run. The first guy is going to have a more stable life. He's going to have less stress. He's going to be happier. While the second guy who's really, really good at poker is just going to be up and down. He's going to be super rich and then he's going to be super broke. Or I don't know if you could be super broke, but he's just going to be broke, And then he's going to have people where he's borrowing money from friends and family, trying to get back up there, and he might get up there, but then he's going to lose it all again. While the guy with the money management is going to be more steady and more even, and it's just going to be better overall. It was such an interesting concept. Something that we don't talk about much in trading. So, like when you are under stress to produce, right? When you have a trade that just has to work out, or you can't pay the mortgage this month, you're going to screw it up. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. 8-ball, and if you're putting on a trade that just has to work, something's going to happen. Something comes out of left field, and it's just going to block you, and the trade is not going to work out. Now, you might say that you trade better under pressure. I've heard that a lot. When I have to do it, when I have to pull all the chips out, when I have to get it all many times. And I say bull. Okay? I don't believe it. And this goes back to the episode I did, the podcast episode called The 5-Finger Strategy. And if you haven't heard that one, go find it and download it and listen to it because you need to. Okay? Trading for a living, listen to it because you need to. Okay? Trading for a living sounds great and glamorous and full of excitement. But you are going to trade better when you don't have the pressure on you to just have to win. The pressure that every trade has to produce. And this is one of the reasons that people with a little bit of money when they get started don't win. Okay? Because people ask me all the time, Alan, how much do I need to get started in selling options? How much money should I have? Can I get by with a couple $100? Can I buy with $1,000 or $2,000? What's the magic number? What do I need? I've recommended for years. People say, hey, you know what? We recommend that you start with $10,000. And if you have to, if you have to twist my arm and say, no, I don't have 10, what's the least I can get by with? I would probably say, 5,000. Because if you're starting with 5,000, if you're starting with less than 10, it's with 5,000. If you're starting with less than 10, it's really, really hard to get enough wins while you're learning that, you overcome the commissions and you overcome the losses so that you can keep making that account grow. Because one loss knocks you down to such a large percentage that it's really, really hard to recover. And so I think that's what Phil is saying here as well, And so part of Phil's money management is that he places a limit on how much he can lose in one day. So he calls them basically their sim is a session. And so every day he has a limit, and this is it. His limit is $10,000, which is probably a lot more than what either one of us would want to lose in a day. But, that's him, right? We can use the example for that for $10,000. If he loses the limit, the example for that for $10,000. If he loses the limit, that's it. He can't play anymore until the next day. He has to wait 24 hours or whatever, the time frame the next day. And here Phil said something really interesting. He said that on days like that, when he hits his limit, poker, or if he's just getting unlucky. Okay, so that's the two ways, right? Why are you losing? Well, the cards just didn't fall for me, or was I screwing up? And when he loses that limit, he knows that he's off, but he can't tell why. There's something he's off, but he can't tell why. There's something there that has knocked him off his game, but he can't tell what it is. And so he has to step back and take a break. Okay. Either way, he needs to get away. If he's not playing well, he should get away. Or if he's being unlucky, you need to get away, and he would go see him. Then once he calms down, he can reconstruct in his mind what happened and try to figure out what went wrong, because he's out of the situation, right? So he's a little bit removed from it. So he can go back and think about it and say, okay, this happened, and well, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. And then he can make adjustments to his game. If you get on a losing streak, and these happen to everybody. So if you get on one, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel that, you're stupid or you're a bad trader or whatever, or the strategy doesn't work. Before you throw in the towel and you go that way, I want you to take a step back. Okay. Before you get, okay. Before you get, you're too far into the forest and you can't tell if you're trading badly or if the market is changing or if the strategy is just wrong. There could be any number of things. But if you lose over and over again, take a step back, go back to the basics and truly figure out what is it that went wrong. Go back to the basics and truly figure out what is it that went wrong. Is it you? Maybe you're not right. Maybe you're not feeling well. Is it the strategy? But again, if there are other people out there that are doing well with the same strategy, then it's probably not the strategy. Okay. Or is it the market that's changing? You thought, but it's doing another, or it was doing one thing and now it's changing and now it's acting differently. You have to be able to figure that out as well. Right. So you have to have a limit. Okay, maybe not like 10 grand a day like Phil, but some amount that if you lose it, it doesn't really impact you that much for your session, whatever it is. Maybe your session is for a week or a month or whatever your time frame is. Now for me, most of my trades use monthly options. Okay. And so I record my progress on a month-to-month basis. I don't do it on a week-to-week or a day-to-day basis. I go month-to-month. So, hey, January, how'd I do? What did I do? How many trades did I do? What was my percentage up and down? What was my profit and loss? February, how'd I do? March, how'd I do? That's how I keep track. So for me, a session would be a month. And if I hit my limit for that month, well, then that's it. I'm out for the rest of the month. I don't do any more trades. I would be on the sideline trying to get my head back in the game. And most likely that is going to save me a ton of money. Okay. Now day traders do this as well. I mean, it's one of the common rules that day traders have, that if you lose a certain amount in a day, boom, that's it. You're done. You can't do the professionals' work. So the big firms in Chicago and New York and Boston and those areas, when they are employing traders, if you hit your max loss for the session, that's it. Go home. Go figure it out. And for newbies, what they do is that, if you hit your session loss, then that's it. You're done for the day. Your monitor is off and you're just going to go run around and do errands for everybody else in the office. You're going to fetch coffee. You're going to get lunch. You're going to do all the stuff that, people don't want to do, and get you away from the trading and from the computers. So if you've ever had it where, you've won for months at a time, right? I get this question a lot with option traders, with option sellers, that I win, over and over and over again, but then I have this one big loss that wipes me out. Well, then, if you're winning over and over and over again and all of your trades start going bad, getting out is exactly what you need to do because your head is not in the game, especially if you cannot tell what the reason is right away. If you're thinking about it and you say, okay, market's just going up. Is going up and up and up. So I'm just going to be putting on all these. The market turns around and you lose on all of them. Well, you kind of figured it out. Hey, the market turned around. That's why I lost. But you should have been able to figure out in advance why the market did that, why the market turned around. Now, sometimes it's not possible, but most of the time, the market does give clues. Okay. The market does give clues. Okay. The market will give you clues. But going back to what we were talking about, if you're in that position, take a break. Maybe even take a few days off. If you're doing it like me, where your session is a month and you lose, well, then take the rest of the month off. Going on, go back and reconstruct what happened. If you had some kind of back testing software that you should have, put the trade on again, see what you would have done differently after you take a break. Not the same day, not the next day. Take a break, get out of it, come back with a fresh set of eyes. Okay, don't go back in and whatever you do. Okay. Don't go back in and whatever you do not get back in the market until you get a brand new session, until the session is over. Okay. So figure it out. What happened? Did the markets change? Was there more volatility all of a sudden? Was there less volatility? Did volatility drop? Did it go up? Was there less volatility? Did volatility drop? Did it go up? Did the market turn and change directions in a way you didn't see coming? Or maybe you had too many trades on at the same time, and you just lost focus. You didn't realize what was going on. Or was it you? Were you the reason? Did you get distracted? Maybe you had a fight with your wife or your spouse. After your break and come back the next session with a way to protect yourself if the same thing happens again. Okay, try to figure out in advance. Like, hey, I'm going through this. A lot of people, divorce is pretty common. Sickness and illness and accidents happen all the time. If you're going through something like that, that's a little long term, maybe a divorce, maybe a child is sick, or maybe a spouse is sick, or maybe you're sick. Don't try to force it. Don't force the trades. Take a step back, take a break, calm down. And then when you're able to get back in, when your mind is back in the game, that's when you come back to the table. Mind is back in the game, that's when you come back to the table. This thing will happen. It happens to all of us, right? We go through ups and downs. We go through our winning streaks and we go through our losing streaks. It happens to everybody. A couple months ago, while I was trading oil options, I had a losing month. And when I went back to analyze the reason, it wasn't because of anything oil did. Oil was pretty calm. It was me. I just didn't do well. And I let it get away from me. I had too many other things going on personally and I blew it. And I had to take complete responsibility for that, right? That's what I put in my notes. Like when I'm recording all my stuff, my trades, and how they worked out and what went wrong, what went right. I put it in there that, I just let things get away from me. And by the time, at that time, I didn't have my head in the game. And by the time I got back in, or my head got back in, the loss was too high to recover from. So I had a losing month, right? Happens to everybody. I'm sure you can go through, you can go back in time and look at it and say, oh, wow, that's happened to me many, many times. Well, this is exactly how you overcome that. Okay, so you have that session loss, right? And when it does happen, when you lose, take a step back, take a break, and go through it. So when it happens to you, don't fret. Now, you shouldn't have this happen all the time, right? If you're selling options, maybe 1 month every couple years would be okay. Because with the high probabilities that option sellers work with, you shouldn't be getting knocked around very often. Okay. Now, on a side note, in my trading hacks training that you can get on our website, we cover ways that you can tell when the market is turning and the market is changing. So like I said, the market gives you clues when it's about to turn around. We go over that in this training hacks training. So if you don't have it, then maybe you should. Or if you don't have your own indicators that can warn you in advance, even if you don't use the stuff I use, please figure it out. And get some quickly. Now, the second thing I learned from Phil was his pyramid system. Okay. Now, back when he was just starting out, he was this is the story he said. He was just starting out, young guy. One day he's in this bar. Some guy, he's already high. He's been smoking weed. He's already high, and he's arguing with people about a $20 pool bet. That's what his life was. He's a gambler, kind of a degenerate, right? Arguing about $20. And that was when it dawned on him, and he asked himself, he's like, what the heck am I doing? And he asked himself, he's like, what the heck am I doing? I'm arguing over $20. I'm high in the middle of the day. And so he went home and he got some perspective, which was really cool. He wrote down 6 life goals for himself. The first was to win the World Series of Poker and essentially be one of the best poker players in the world. You want to buy a house, buy a car, have a best-selling book, and there was some other one that I don't remember. But then he went a step further. So he's got the goals, and everybody has goals, right? Making a list of goals, not a big deal, right? I want to be the best trader in the world. I want to retire. Great. You have your goals. But then you have to take it a step further. And so what he did was he made a pyramid. He drew a pyramid with different levels. And he wrote down all the things that he needed to be the best, to get his goals. Okay? So in order to be the best poker player, he would have to have the physical stamina to be able, endurance of, getting lucky, getting unlucky, getting the good cards, getting the bad cards, going through hours of boredom and then getting really excited. He would have to have the cash flow, the money management. He would have to have the skills to actually play poker. He would have to have the presence, where people would know about him and fear him, the reputation the reputation that he has. He had to develop that. So he made a list of all these different things and he put them all on the pyramid. He listed everything with the easier things on the bottom. Those were the foundation of the pyramid. And then he listed the harder things at the top. So he needed to be concise. He needed to eat better, cut down on drinking and drugs and so on. And so he went to work on those things right away. He didn't wait around. He made the thing. He had this epiphany and he went to work right away. And 1 year later, he had accomplished 5 of his 6 lifetime goals. 5 of his 6 lifetime goals. Those were the goals for his whole life. And he had already gotten knocked out 5 of 6 of them. That's pretty cool, right? But it happened because he got serious, right? He worked on all areas of his life because everything is connected. So it wasn't just, I got to get better at poker. It's not just get better at trading. I got to master this thing. No, you have to work on everything. If your emotional status or your emotional state is not in line, you're going to put on more weight. If you put on more weight, you're not going to feel good. If you don't feel good, you're not going to be able to get up in the morning. If you don't get up in the morning, you might miss stuff. Stuff is all connected. So we have to realize that as well. And then what he had was he had a second pyramid, okay, because he knew that in poker, all of the money flows up to the top. And that's what he said. At the bottom of the pyramid are these small games. Okay. After that come the home games. And then there are the small casinos. And then the larger casinos. And then there's the big money and the big games and the tournaments all the way at the top. So that's how he laid it out for poker. And in order to get to the top, he had to work on all the skills needed to beat each level and then move higher. So in his first pyramid, he worked on each level and then move higher. So in his first pyramid, he worked on himself, right? It was about eating better. It was about staying calm. It was about being less emotional, getting up early, being in good shape. On this one, it's his actual poker skills, kind of like our trading skills. What do we need as a trader? Well, money management is there. Risk management is there. Adjustments are there. Having the right strategy, creating your own trading plan, back testing. All these things are there, right? So we have the same thing in trading. So at the base level, it could be your income, right? Totally base foundation is what I'm talking about. It could be your income coming from trading while you're learning how to trade. If you're already trading well and you're already trading for a living, then that's a different thing. But if you're just learning, trading for income is not going to be your base. Your base is too risky. You need to have more than one method of generating an income. And so maybe you're working, or maybe this. If that income is stable, then you have a stable foundation on which to build on. But if you're looking to get into trading, but your income is not stable, The first thing you need to do is get your income stable and then come into trading, because it's not going to work out otherwise. You have to have that foundation before you start. It's very important, so that that foundation, that income, can give you the freedom and the time to learn without the pressure. Okay, I keep talking about this mental pressure. The mental pressure is what breaks people and makes you mess up, makes you miss things in your trading. Okay, but if you have learn because of that income foundation, then you'll do much better in the long term. So you start with the basics, right? You got your foundation down, then you start with maybe a simple strategy. Maybe the simplest one is out there. You know, like if we're talking about maybe covered calls, maybe that's the first strategy you start with, or maybe credit spreads. You know, to me, those are two or maybe credit spreads. You know, to me, those are two what I would call introductory strategies, because the risk is kind of defined. People are familiar with them. You know, with the covered call, you have the stock. People are familiar with it. They kind of get the idea. The credit spread, almost similar concept, you know, but similar concept, you know, but limited risk. So, you know, you start with the strategies. After that, maybe you build on top of that. Maybe you have your money management, you have your risk management, you have your adjustments, right? And then on top of that, you have scaling, which is probably the biggest thing, right? You're scaling, because scaling 250 to 500 or a million, the skills are the same almost. There's a few little tweaks you need to adjust, you know, where you need to hedge yourself a little bit more. You need to be more protected on the downside because you have more to lose. But otherwise, the trading skills are the same. You find the trades the same way, you get them in the same. Otherwise, the trading skills are the same. You find the trades the same way, you get them in the same way, you know, you adjust them the same way. All that is the same. The only biggest problem, or the biggest thing that's keeping people back from scaling, is mental. It's all in your head. You know, going from 10,000 to 100,000, everything could, you know, going from 10,000 to 100,000, everything could be the same except that extra zero. And that extra zero is in the head. And that's what keeps a lot of people from scaling up. So if your mental picture is there, it's going to take you a while to scale up, to get over that mental hurdle of being. So, you know, you're working on that. And that's at the top of the pyramid. So you work on all the basics, you work on the base, you have the foundation, you work on the strategies, you work on the management. Then when you get to the top, you work on the mind, and you work on the scaling. So by having these two pyramids, it gave Phil a roadmap, and it gave him a list of what he needed to be working on right then and there. You know, no confusion, no jumping around from one strategy to the next. He put in the time and effort, and he got it done. And you can do the same. So, you know, it's not just a to-do list. All right. He knew what skills he needed to work on, and he went to work on them one at a time. He wasn't just, you know, I need to work on adjustments, and I need to work on this new strategy, and I need to work on how to hedge myself. No. He knew what order they came in, and he knew what he needed to do first. He did get it until he mastered it. Then he moved up to one level, and then he mastered that one. Then he moved to the top. And like he said, you know, he won the World Series within a year. So it doesn't take that long to move up the pyramid. And for them, you know, he was doing it full time. And he wasn't married, didn't have kids, he wasn't married, didn't have kids at the time. So he had all the time in the world to devote to it. If that's you, great, you know, go all in, go 100%. But most of us are not like that. And so we're going to have to take it a little bit slower. And so if it takes more than a year to be a master trader, that's okay. If it takes 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's a master trader, that's okay. If it takes 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's okay. Right? As long as we're getting better, as long as things are improving, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're getting better and we're improving. And that's more fun than actually making the money, right? Making the money is great. Having the good trades is awesome. But when you are getting better and better as a trader, you know, that's when it gets really, really exciting. And I say this all the time, you know, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but I keep saying that when you have a watch list of stocks, you know, when you're watching certain stocks and you've been watching them and their charts and you see how they behave for maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you have a sixth sense. It develops somehow. I can't even explain it, but you have an ability to tell how that stock is going to react, So if good earnings comes out and the stock moves in a certain way, you'll be able to predict in advance, okay, if earnings are good, this is what should happen. If earnings are bad, this is what should happen. And if the opposite happens, ding, 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 alarm bells goes off and say, wait a minute, something's going on here. I need to investigate, even if it's something that moves in your favor. So I think that having that watch list is really, really important. So you have that sixth sense. Okay. And that's what the more experience you have, the more you can tell. Like that Daniel Negreanu guy, he can predict what people have in their hands, the two hold cards, not because they told him or not because he can see through the cards or he's like a mind reader, but he can tell by the way they play. How much money do they have any tells? Meaning, are they nervous? Are they fidgety? Or are they showing strength? Or are they showing weakness? Those are all ways that these people tell and how they get better at poker. It's the same thing with trading. We have our own tells. We have our own ways to develop experience. Okay. And then there was this one more develop experience. Okay. And then there was this one more thing that I noticed in this interview with Phil. I know that I said there were two things, so count this one as a bonus. There was a time when Phil was already famous, okay? And he was like on top of the world. He was going to all these parties. He knew all these big stars and celebrities. But when he was losing a lot of money, but at that point he was still really, really cocky. And that was the point where a friend pulled him aside and got him back on track. And he did that by making him realize that all of the glamour and the fame and all the money, all that stuff was not what was really important. The bedrock of his success and the stuff that's always going to be there was his family. That was his real foundation. So once he had that epiphany, once Phil realized that, he's like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Because at that point, changed my phone. Like on his phone, he had two pictures. One was a picture of him and George Bush, and one was a picture with him and with Bill Clinton. So it doesn't matter if you were Republican or Democrat. He had you covered either way. He had these two pictures on his phone. But once he realized this, he took those pictures off. Because, why would you have a picture? He took those pictures off. Because, why would you have a picture of yourself with the president except to kind of show off, right? It's like an ego thing, Oh, yeah, hey, I know these guys, right? They're friends of mine. I know them. I hang out with them. But it's an ego thing. But he took those pictures off, and he had one picture with his wife, and so every time he would turn his phone on, he would see these pictures. And that's what brought him back to reality. So he changed his ways. Almost instantaneously, he changed. He put more importance on his family. And essentially what happened was that he got out of his losing streak. And he did 4 times better. He did 4 times better than he had ever done before. So, he had amazing success when he went back to basics, when he bent back to what's important. So that was the third thing that I wanted to point out. From what I could tell about this interview, all of the stories that I shared with you are covered in this book, Brett. If you're interested in the complete story, go pick it up. I'm sure you'll learn a lot of things in there because, like I said, trading and playing poker are very similar. So get it from Amazon or whatever. Now, that does it for this episode, folks. I hope that you got a lot out of this interview. I did. Okay. Better way to do it, to plot out your progress and what you need to accomplish than say, to-do lists. Because I got to-do lists all over the place. I have so many to-do lists. My to-do lists have to-do lists. I run out of space on one sheet, then I have another one. Then I got another one. I have so many of them that I don't get to all of them. I'm looking around on my table. Right now, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to-do lists. No, wait, there's more. There's 6, 7, 8. There are 8 to-do lists right in front of me as I'm doing this. This is on my main table, my main desk. 9. Make it 9. And I'm not even looking for them. These are just the ones that I can see. Oh man, that's scary. So I want to implement this pyramid thing. I think it's an awesome strategy. You actually plot your progress, which is an awesome thing, but then you can find out where your weaknesses are. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try the method. I already believe firmly in money management. You know, what we talked about at the beginning of the episode. And it's super important in poker, and it's super important in trading, and it's just about in any financial pursuit, you know, especially if you're running a business. You know, money management, you got to have it. Otherwise, you're going to go broke. Okay? Have it. Otherwise, you're going to go broke. Okay? So, folks, that's it for this episode. Until next time, remember, trade with the odds in your favor. Do you want to get started living the Option Genius lifestyle today? Well then, head on over to optiongenius.com and sign up 9-lesson course on how to sell options.